wide, zone, center fix, spot, small, large, medium, tracking spot, large, tracking wide, tracking zone. Oh my god, there's so many options to choose from, and then there are options on top of the options. Eye autofocus, face tracking. So how do I focus where I want? How do I focus on one face if there are multiple faces in one frame using Sony system? In this video, I'm coming to you with answers. I'm going to walk you through all the AF area options on Sony A7IV and similar cameras. So let's do it. Hello everyone, this is Magic. I'm a wedding photographer, Sony Europe ambassador, father of 4 children. Welcome to this YouTube channel where I mostly talk about Sony gear and wedding scenarios. And today I'm going to break down all the AF system options, specifically AF area options, so how to actually focus where I want to focus during weddings, on a couple shoot. So I will show you a video of exactly how I set up stuff when I shoot a couple. And this specifically is for Sony A7IV, but you have majority of these options are actually similar to all the previous generation cameras, and it's actually the same for all the current generation cameras. So A7R4, A7S3, A1, A9 Mark II, even A7C, all will have the same options as I will walk you through today. Okay, so to fully understand the AF areas and how they work, let's start with the basic, which is a focus mode. So on Sony cameras, you have 5 to choose from. You have AF-S, which is autofocus single, then you have AF-C, which is autofocus continuous, then you have AF-A, which is in between those two, so cameras decides whether the subject is moving or not, and it will use either continuous or a single autofocus. And then we have a manual focus and DMF, which is like sort of enhanced manual focus. So you focus using your autofocus and then you can manually just adjust focus. So by default, you access this through the C3 button or through the menu if you prefer to do it this way. And among these 5, actually, there's only one worth using for wedding photography, and it is AF-C, which is autofocus continuous. So the way it works, it will continuously focus when you're holding your shutter half pressed. Okay, so if you are using a point and you are pointing at something and try to focus on something, as long as you have pressed the shutter, the camera will focus on whatever is where the point is. The autofocus single is rather old school things of doing this, so you just half press the shutter and the camera locks the focus in place, like whatever it is happening now in front of you, the camera doesn't care. It will keep the focus whatever you initially half pressed. So personally for me, I don't see many occasions at wedding that you would want to use AF-S, and AF continuous is just way better in Sony cameras. So I do recommend using AF-C, and then most of the tracking systems that are available in this camera will benefit from using AF-C. Okay, so focus mode, we got it. Now, before going into AF area, let's go to the menu and set things up there. So in A7IV menu, but actually majority of these settings will be the same for the older menu as well. But in this menu, if you go to the AF-MF tab, this is where you have your focus mode. So you can change it from here. That we already covered. But then you have priority settings for AF single and AF continuously. And basically, it tells the camera whether you want your priority to be take a photo no matter if it catches a focus or not, or you tell camera, make sure you catch the focus before you actually snap the photo. Or you have something in between, which is this middle balance option that is set by default. And actually, I do recommend using this one. I don't see many occasions that I would need to wait for camera to focus, that I couldn't snap a photo. So that balance is really good. Unless you really feel that your camera is slow on you and you prefer taking a photo no matter what, or maybe you're doing a very difficult lighting scenarios and you can see that you cannot take a photo because you have to wait for your camera to focus, then you might want to change to a release priority. So it totally depends on you, but personally I have never found a need to switch from that balance emphasis. One more important settings right here is AF tracking sensitivity, and we have like 5 levels of tracking sensitivity, starting with 1, which is locked on, to 5, which is responsive. So here you decide how sticky you want your autofocus to be. Even if your subject that you're initially focusing on is getting out of the area you're focusing on. So let's say you're pointing at a person, okay? You're pointing and focusing at that person, you're holding your shutter half pressed, so you are continuously focusing on that person, and that person moves away from that point, or maybe you move your camera away, so you're pointing at something else right now. And here you decide how fast you want your camera to switch from that old subject that you are focusing on to a new subject. Okay, so if you go lock on, you'll see that it will take a camera longer to switch from that first person that you are shooting at or a subject that you are shooting at to a background, let's say. Or if you go responsive, it will change really fast. That also applies if something is getting in front of your camera. One more super important option to change right here is aperture drive in AF. Here you set focus priority. I have a full video on why that is super crucial for wedding photography. Check it out in the description. But yeah, focus priority is the way to go. And then let's move to face and eye autofocus setup, because you need to set this up in order to understand how camera works. So by default, the face and eye priority in autofocus is set to on, which is my recommended option as well. Set it to human. And then I do recommend turning on face and eye frame display. So if you turn this on, you will always see the gray frame around the faces that camera is recognizing, and this will help you quickly changing focus from one person to another. Okay, so now we have our AFC set, we have our face and eye autofocus settings set. Let's go to the AF area settings. So by default, you access them through a C2 button. Okay, so if you click on this, the first one that will show up is the wide. Wide is basically an auto, so you don't get to decide what your camera is focusing on. If, however, you've set up the face and eye priority before, you will see that camera will be prioritizing a faces and eyes of people that you have in the frame. But then if you have more than one person, you don't get to decide on which person your camera is focusing on. So in this example, you can see the gray frames around both of my couple faces as camera is recognizing both faces, right? But then it just, focus on whatever camera feels is right. So here you can see it starts with her on the right, so camera focuses on her face. But then when she sort of moves to the back, the camera is moving the focus to his face. So kind of makes sense, but then it's not up to you. It might just change to whoever is more in front of you. And then if you have more people in the frame, you kind of totally lose control over it. So with just one couple in the frame, okay, not a big deal. You'll have focus on one of the faces, but still, I think as a professional, you want to have a control over what you're focusing on. So let's move to the next one. The next one is zone. And zone, I would describe zone as a smaller wide. So you're basically limiting a piece of a frame, and you get to choose with your joystick which zone you want to choose. It's still, a big piece of a frame, but now you can move it around. So you sort of limit which part of the frame you want your camera to be focusing at. So let's have my couple walking towards me again. So we have the same scenario, but now we are changing to zone, okay? So I'm gonna move my zone to the right, as you can see, by using a joystick. And now my camera, you can still see both faces in gray boxes, so camera recognize both of the faces, but now I tell camera, make sure you're focusing only in that piece of frame, so it will focus on a face that it will find in this zone. So as you can see, it's not going to switch to his face, okay, although it sees it, but he's out of zone. And even in the moment that we lost her face because she was spinning, the camera still focused on her hair because that was sort of the most interesting object in that zone for the camera. So there was no face, but still it wouldn't switch to another face because we told the camera specifically, do not focus outside of the zone. So that's pretty convenient. And again, when you have a couple and you can quickly just change the zone from one side of the frame to the another side of the frame, you're gonna make sure that you're focusing on someone you want. So you get somewhat control over it. Of course, the zone is still big, so if you have many people in the frame, you'll again lose a control because the zone is just too big. There's going to be a few faces in the frame, and camera will decide on its own which face it's going to focus. And then me personally, I would use zone on a dance floor. So let's say I have a couple dancing and I want to make sure that, for example, I'm framing to have a person face on the left. I'm not gonna know where exactly that face will be, but I wanna have it framed on the left. So I'm gonna use a zone, move it to the left, and just wait for camera to just catch a face, and then bam, 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 take my shots. Wait, do you guys struggle with culling your images quickly? Let me just show you how I cull my images using our today's sponsor, Narrative Select tool. So this tool uses artificial intelligence to actually determine which photos looks good or bad. It does look at the faces, it does recognize all the faces in the frame, it shows you the close-up of these faces, and then rate the faces from 0 to 10. These days, with the mirrorless technology, I don't know about you, but I tend to shoot more photos. So I come back home with cards filled with more photos, more good photos. I have more photos in one burst. So I kind of overshoot these days. Thank you, technology. But then, on the other hand, you get other technology to help you cull these images quicker. So you have this film strip down here. As you can see, I've shot many photos of the bridesmaids, and you can either have it shown like this in a one film strip, or you can click here at a scenes view, and in a scenes view you can see right away, oh dude, you've shot 49 images in this one scene. Which gives me easy access to being like, hey, I need just one. So I'm just gonna click on this, and right here, marked yellow, I see images that there's something wrong with them, and red are images that there's certainly something very wrong with them. So how it determines which photos are good and which are bad? Like, as you can see, when you click on images, it will show me the faces of all the people in that frame straight away with two indicators here. One is eyes indicator, and the second one is a focus indicator. So I can right away tell, okay, all these faces are in focus. Some of them are closed, some of them are open, some of them are like partially open. So you can quickly just say, okay, I don't need any of these red ones. So here on the top right, you can actually filter, hey, I don't want to see any of the red ones right away. I'm just gonna want to see the images without warning, which gives you a quick access to the best of the best photos, especially with group photos like this. So you're probably thinking, holy shit, Magic, this is amazing, but probably super expensive. No, it's not. It's actually free if you use it for up to 6 projects per month. So you can call 6 projects each month without paying anything. If you do a high volume photography, you definitely need this tool. And then if you do above 6 projects per month, you can just use a pro version, which gives you unlimited projects per month, per year. You can do million a day. Make sure you use the link in the description to sign up and check how it works for you. Okay, back to the video. The next one is the most stupid one, and I'm not sure why even it's there. It's called center fix, and basically it's just camera focusing on the center of the frame. You have sort of a small zone, like very small zone in the middle, and you cannot change it. Like, I don't recommend using this. I don't see any reason why you would want to use this. But then the fun begins. We do have a spot. It used to be called flexible spot. Now it's called only a spot. And we can change it, the size of the spot, by moving our joystick from left to the right. So you can go spot small, spot medium, and spot large. And spot is the way to go if you want to focus on a very specific face or a very specific part of the frame. So you just simply move your point using your joystick. If it gets close enough to the face that your camera is recognizing, so you see that gray boxes. So if you move that point very close to that box, it will immediately pick up the face. And if your point stays very close to that face, it will just recognize that face and being like, oh, I'm guessing you want to focus on that face. If you don't want that, you might want to turn off the focus priority because you maybe want something that is very close to the face but not face itself. But with focus priority on, with point getting very close to the box of, recognizing the face, it will just catch the face. That's why I think it's very important to turn on these boxes. They are very helpful. I know for some it might be distracting, but these are very helpful to understand how you're focusing. So you can see, as long as the point is on that face or a very close to that face, camera will stick its focus to that face, and it will be as sticky as you set in your sensitivity settings. You remember, so moving your point away from your face will make camera switch to the background, and how fast it's going to switch to the background is that sensitivity that we were talking before. So look at this, we have our point at the guy's face, and even though he's not moving, he's a very boring subject, but the point is on his face. And she is moving. She's moving really towards us, really close. I asked her to just, play around with the camera, but camera, even though it can see her and recognize her face, is sticking to his face because the point is on his face. But again, if we move my point away of his face, the camera will follow the point, so it will refocus. There is, however, a cool trick in order to have your camera focusing on the eye or face, even if your point is away from it. You would have to set your custom button. So one of your custom buttons, you can set it to eye autofocus. Okay, and this way, if you just press the eye autofocus, not half press the shutter, but eye autofocus, so asking a camera, find an eye and focus on it, it will focus on an eye or face that is the closest to your point. So even if you move away your point right now from the face, but you're not using half press shutter, so you're not trying to focus where the point is, but you are using eye autofocus. So again, you're telling a camera, find an eye and focus on it. It will find an eye of the person that is the closest to that point. That is a very cool trick, and it's sort of a way of get somewhat of sort of real-time tracking in a camera that doesn't have a real-time tracking. Okay, so if you have A7 III or A7R3, I think this is the best way to track the subject across the whole frame, even if you're using a point spot autofocus. Okay, so you can use spot autofocus but still track the face and eye that is not at the point. And that basically was my main go-to autofocus settings when I was using A7R3 cameras. I was using spot, I was using spot small, and I was using that eye autofocus on a separate button. Next, we do have expand spot. Expand spot is basically a spot with additional points around, autofocus points around. So if camera cannot focus on a point, it will just use the additional points. I don't see many reasons to use it, but yeah, basically it's just another way of using a point. I prefer using a small spot autofocus. And now we get into that real-time tracking autofocus capabilities of A7 IV and all the modern cameras. So this is where new Sony cameras get to shine a little bit more. And so you go to the last one, and it's called tracking. And now you can also see that with tracking, you can go left to right and choose basically every type of the AF area that I've just mentioned. So you have wide, you have zone, you have center fix, you have spot, ML, and you have expand spot. But now it works a little bit differently. The way it works is that whatever you will set here, so whatever it goes after tracking, so let's say you are using wide or zone, this is a way to tell the camera how to initially grab focus on a subject, but if it will grab a focus on a subject, it will stick to it no matter where in the frame that subject will move, or no matter how you will reframe the image. As long as you keep your half-pressed shutter, it will stick to that subject. So it will track that subject. So let's see examples. So remember when I showed you how using a spot autofocus and moving it outside of the recognized face, the camera refocuses on the background. So with tracking, it's not the case anymore. You focus on the face and it will stick to it until you stop focusing. So until you stop half pressing the shutter. So you kind of have to switch your thinking about focusing, in my opinion. Now you're basically thinking how to acquire a subject, not how to focus on a subject, how to acquire a focus on a subject. Look at the icon on the left. It changes from before you acquire focus. It shows, let's say here, it shows the point, so spot with that tracking icon. But as soon as you lock on focus on a subject or face, the icon switches to the wide, because now it tracks the whole frame and it tracks that subject that you initially grabbed focus on. So the way I personally work these days is I am using a spot, small autofocus in tracking mode. So I'm using a joystick and that spot to tell camera, grab focus on this and stick to it. And then grab focus on that and stick to it. And then grab focus on this and stick to it. It's sort of like it used to be that you would be recomposing. Remember those old DSLR days where you half pressed and recomposed, half pressed and recomposed? I kind of do this right now because I choose with joystick what I want to focus on. I half press, but then I can recompose. But I can recompose and my camera will still be focus tracking the subject. And this is a game changer. That's why I do think that the modern cameras have a certain benefit to them, especially when using for wedding photography, that you have subjects that they're moving, that they're, quickly changing places, or you are reframing, you're changing the frames constantly because the action is rather quick than slow. So that's the all AF area options. I think I covered it all. Let me know in the comments what do you guys use, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is helpful and it will help you be a better photographer. Thanks so much for watching and see you in the next one.